The first time Lieutenant Myra Imani saw the alien queen, it was through 3 layers of glass, a containment field, and a lifetime of human prejudice. The viewing chamber was cold, all steel and soft blue light. On the other side of the barrier, in a pressurized hall filled with amber haze, the queen of the Sakar hive stood motionless. She was enormous, 4 meters tall from claw to crown. Her exoskeleton was a shifting palette of obsidian and deep violet, plates overlapping like armor grown from shadow. 6 limbs rested on the organic-looking platform beneath her, and a crest of jointed spines fanned out behind her head like a crown caught mid-unfurl. Mara had seen hollows, of course. Every human had. Propaganda from the war 20 years ago still lingered in history feeds. Sakar swarm ships eclipsing suns, hive soldiers crawling over shattered stations in endless waves. None of those images had prepared her for the stillness. The queen did not pace, did not twitch, did not roar. She simply was an unmoving axis in the amber haze, as though everything around her orbited some invisible gravity. "Creepy, isn't she?" said a voice behind Mara. Mara didn't turn. "That's her radiant matriarch Velshira, supreme sovereign of the Sakar clusters," she said. "Maybe don't call the keystone of an interspecies peace treaty creepy, where the station mics can hear you." Sergeant Kellen Gray, her fellow security officer, leaned against the railing beside her, helmet tucked under his arm. "Yeah, well, her radiant whatever is giving me the corpse stare. I thought queens were supposed to move." "She doesn't have to move," Myra replied. "Her mind's linked to every drone in her retinue. She's probably walking half the station through their eyes." Kellen snorted. "That's supposed to make me feel better." It didn't make Myra feel better either. The idea of a mind that vast, spread through thousands, maybe millions of bodies, made her skin prickle under her uniform. But there was something else tugging at her attention, something that didn't match the horror stories she'd grown up with. There was a faint shimmer in the haze around the queen, not just the containment field, something subtler, like heat ripples on a road. "She's quiet," Mara murmured. "Yeah, so?" "So the briefing said she's always sending background signals, low-level psychic noise. The older Marines said it's like feeling someone breathe at the back of your thoughts, but standing here I don't feel anything." Kellen rolled his shoulders. "Maybe her Wi-Fi's switched off for the meeting." Mara gave him a look. "You know this summit is the most important diplomatic event in 3 sectors, right?" "Yeah, that's why they stuck us up here staring at a bug behind glass, peace through boredom." Mara smiled despite herself. A week ago, the orbital station Halcyon had been a shipping checkpoint over Khazar, a scarred moon circling an orange dwarf. Now it was the neutral ground between humanity and the Sakar. The war was long past, but the wounds lingered, border skirmishes, trade embargoes, worlds that still flinched at the sight of the other. This summit was supposed to change that. A binding alliance, shared technology, a framework to rewrite 2 histories soaked in each other's blood, and the symbol of that fragile hope stood motionless in a haze-filled chamber while human guards watched from behind glass. "She looking at you?" Kellen asked. Myra realized her hand was pressed against the barrier. The queen's faceted eyes, dozens of dark lenses set in bone-white sockets, seemed turned vaguely in her direction. "It's a coincidence," Mara said, pulling her hand back. "Sure it is," Kellen said. "Come on, Commander wants us at the security briefing. Somebody has to make sure the diplomats don't strangle each other." They walked away from the queen's chamber. Only once did Mara glance back. The queen hadn't moved. But the faint shimmer in the air around her seemed, just for a second, to pulse in Mara's direction, like the echo of a heartbeat that wasn't hers. Won the station and the shadows, the Halcyon wasn't meant for this kind of traffic. Its corridors, designed for cargo crews and customs officials, now hummed with the nervous energy of diplomacy. Human ambassadors in Navy uniforms strode through the main concourse, flanked by Marine honor guards. Sakar envoys moved among them, taller than humans, their bioluminescent markings pulsing faintly, their jointed legs making a dry clacking against the deck. Everywhere, security checkpoints, scanner arrays, holographic maps glowing with restricted zones. The human side had triple coverage. No one wanted to be the officer on duty if something went wrong while the Queen was aboard. Myra took all of that in as she and Kellen joined the circle of officers in the briefing room. Commander Jace Rurk stood at the center, arms crossed. He was a legend from the war, or so the stories said. Rurk had led the defense of Rift Station when the Sakar broke through the Khazar line. Hollows of him in battered armor, helmet off, face streaked with ash, had been printed on recruitment posters back when Myra was 11 and still thought heroism was something you wore like a badge. The real man looked older than his hollows. Grayer at the temples, a lattice of pale scars across his left cheek. His eyes, though, were exactly as the posters had shown, blue and sharp like unblinking ice. "All right," Rurk said as the last officers fell silent. "We go live in 2 hours. The Queen will be escorted from her chamber to Conference Hall A." He tapped the holodable, and lines of light traced routes across a miniature projection of the station. "Via Corridor Spine 1 through Security Gate Delta, we control every choke point, every airlock, Marines on primary route. Station security on secondary routes and observation platforms. No unscreened personnel within 50 meters." He flicked his wrist, zooming in on the route. "You've all seen the intel," he continued. "There are factions on both sides who don't want this alliance. That makes today a magnet for trouble. We've already intercepted chatter from human supremacist channels. Pure Dawn, Sons of Earth, the usual filth. We're not taking chances." Mara glanced at Kellen. He made a face that said, "I told you so." Rurk's gaze swept the circle. "You see something strange, you call it in. You hear something off, you call it in. You even sense something that makes the hairs on your neck stand up, you call it in," the officers chorused. Rurk nodded. "You're not heroes today, you're barriers. You are walls between chaos and the Queen. You do not improvise, you do not trust your gut. You follow protocol." Myra felt a small twist in her stomach at that. There had been a time when she would have hung on Rurk's every word. She joined security partly because of him, because the stories made it sound simple. Stand straight, follow orders, and you'd be one of the good ones. Years of station work had complicated that illusion. It was never that simple. Still, this was bigger than a cargo inspection or a smuggler's raid. Her tongue tasted like metal, and she realized she was nervous. When the briefing broke up, Rurk's voice cut across the room again. "Imani, Gray." "Word." Myra and Kellen approached. "Yes, sir," Myra said. Rurk looked between them. "You two pulled Queen Watch this morning." "Yes, sir," Kellen said. "She didn't so much as blink." "She watching you?" Rurk asked. Myra blinked. "Sir, rumor says the Queen presses on the minds of those who look at her too long," Rurk said. "Old Marines say it's like standing knee-deep in somebody else's dreams. You feel anything odd?" Kellen shook his head. "Just creeped out, sir." Rurk's eyes settled on Myra. "Imani," Myra hesitated. "She was quiet, sir." "Quiet," Rurk repeated. "The briefing said there'd be background psychic noise," Myra said, forcing herself to keep her voice level. "I didn't feel anything. It was like," she searched for words, "like looking at a storm cloud and hearing nothing." Rurk watched her for a heartbeat longer than felt comfortable. "Keep that to yourself," he said finally. "Last thing we need is jumpy Marines imagining what the Queen is or isn't thinking. Understood?" "Yes, sir," Myra said. He nodded. "You two are on overwatch along Spine 1. Human civilians will be in observation bays above the route. If anyone even sneezes at the wrong moment, you flag it." "Understood," they said. As they exited into the corridor, Kellen exhaled. "Am I the only one who thinks the old man hates being here?" "He fought them," Myra said. "Now he has to guard their Queen. Doesn't take a psychologist to see the conflict." Kellen shrugged. "I dunno. If it were me, I'd be glad the war was over. Peace means fewer things shooting at your face." Mara didn't answer. A memory had surfaced, her father sitting at a kitchen table on Vesta Station, eyes red from sleeplessness, feeds showing burning ships. "They eat planets," he'd said when Mara had asked why he was scared. "They don't think like we do. We're food to them or a resource or a mistake." He'd been wrong about some of that. The declassified files had proven the Sakar weren't planet eaters. not in the way the propaganda painted them. But he hadn't been wrong about the core fear. Humanity didn't understand their minds, and minds you didn't understand were easy to make monsters of. To the procession 2 hours later, Myra stood on the catwalk above corridor spine 1, pulse rifle slung, helmet sealed, visor in place. Directly below, the wide corridor had been cleared. Its walls were draped in banners, one bearing the stylized eagle of the United Terran Coalition, the other the sigil of the Sakar Conclave, a spiral of interlocking triangles like a hive seen from above. Marines lined the route in crisp formation. At either end, security barricades and bulkhead doors gleamed with fresh paint. Observation windows along the upper level were already filling with faces, station workers, off-duty crew, dignitaries, all staring down. "Overwatch 1 report," came Rurk's voice over the comm. "Overwatch 1 checks," Myra replied, her HUD highlighted motion, tagged friendlies, overlaid maps, no anomalies. "Overwatch 2 checks," Kellen added from the opposite side of the corridor. "All stations report green," came a chorus of voices. Rurk's voice was calm. "Proceed." At the far end, the bulkhead doors to the Queen's chamber slid open. The Sakar Honor Guard emerged first, 6 towering figures in pale chitin armor, carrying staffs tipped with faintly pulsing crystals. Their markings glowed in patterns that Myra couldn't read but had been told were ceremonial. Behind them, the Queen. She did move now, slowly, deliberately. Each step was a measured placement of limb on deck, claws clicking softly. The bioluminescence along her flanks flared in time with some rhythm only she knew. A corona of faint, shimmering particles swirled around her crest, like dust caught in invisible currents. The station, which never truly slept, seemed to hold its breath. On Myra's HUD, the Queen was a cluster of bio-readouts fed from sensors in the deck. Heartbeat, if you could call it that. Neural activity like a storm. Her guard flanked her. Behind them walked the human delegation, led by Ambassador Ren Ocampo. Marines in dress blacks brought up the rear, boots synchronized. Myra swept her gaze across the observation windows, faces pressed to glass, eyes wide, some fearful, some fascinated. Her gaze snagged on a cluster near the midpoint, a group of 4 humans in station maintenance uniforms standing slightly apart. Her HUD tagged their badges, IDs checked out, but there was something off. "Overwatch 1 to command," she murmured. "Got 4 techs at window segment C7, 15 meters ahead of the Queen's path. They're tense. No illegal hardware visible, but I'm flagging for you." "Copy, Overwatch 1, came Rurk's reply. "Zoom and record will cross-check." She focused her visor, magnifying. One of the techs had a jaw clenched tight enough to show tendons. Another's hand tapped a rhythm on the rail, fingers too precise, like counting. Something in Myra's stomach knotted. The Queen's procession moved closer. The hum of the station's system seemed quieter beneath the rhythm of boots and claws. The tech whose hand was tapping glanced sideways, lips moving, not speech, numbers. "Kellen," Myra said on a private channel. "C7 right below me, see those techs?" "Yeah," he said, "they look like I feel." "That 1 second from the left, he's mouthing something, looks like counting down." "You sure?" "No," Myra admitted. But an error ping flashed in her HUD. For a fraction of a second, her display fuzzed with static and then cleared. "What was that?" she muttered. "Glitch in the security feed," came another officer's voice. "We've got a blip on sensors, but—" There was a sound like the sky being torn open. The floor of the corridor, 10 meters ahead of the Queen, erupted in a column of white fire. 3, when the guards ran the blast wave, hit Myra like a physical shove, even from her elevated perch. Her visor dimmed against the flash. Sound cut to a dull roar. The corridor below turned into chaos. The explosion had torn a jagged hole in the deck, jagged metal curling upward like frozen waves. The shockwave flung Marines aside, some slamming into walls, others tumbling into the observation windows above. The banners were ripped free and incinerated. The Queen staggered. For the first time, Myra saw her truly falter, several of her limbs buckled. One of her honor guard was simply gone, reduced to fragments. Another lay motionless, armor cracked. Screams erupted from the observation windows. The cluster of techs she'd been watching scattered. "Breach! Breach in Spine 1!" voices shouted over the comm. "Explosion at Grid F-13, we have multiple casualties." The Queen's corona of particles flared, then dimmed. Myra's HUD flashed a blizzard of warnings: structural compromise, atmospheric pressure dropping, fire suppression systems activating. "Overwatch to all units," Rourke's voice snapped. "Seal bulkheads, protect the Queen." But even as he spoke, something else cut in, a second tremor, deeper this time, shuddering through the station. It wasn't an explosion, it was a pulse. Myra felt it more than heard it, a low vibration that seemed to roll through her bones, making her teeth ache. Her HUD jittered, then froze for half a second. In that half-second, she felt something brush the edge of her mind. It wasn't words, it wasn't images, it was awareness. A flicker of vastness, like standing at the lip of an abyss and feeling the abyss notice you. Then it was gone, leaving her breathless. "EMP ripple," someone shouted over comm. "Our grid's taking hits. Multiple systems are—" The overhead lights flickered, then failed, plunging the corridor into darkness. Emergency strips along the walls snapped on a heartbeat later, bathing everything in pulsing red. Below, the Queen let out a sound, not a roar, not precisely. It was a layered vibration, half audible, half felt, that made the deck vibrate. Her surviving guards tightened their formation. And then the Marines broke, not all at once, not in cowardice. They'd been trained for explosions, for fire, for vacuum. But they had not been trained for the station itself to judder like a wounded animal, for gravity to hiccup as the stabilizers hiccuped, for an alien psychic wave to run through their nervous systems and drag old war nightmares screaming to the surface. "Pull back." One shouted, voice high with panic. "Secondary route, fall back to—" "Hold position," another barked, but his voice broke halfway and his feet were already moving backward. Myra watched, stunned, as the neat lines of human guards dissolved in a scramble toward the bulkhead doors. A few held their ground for a heartbeat longer, then followed, dragged by herd instinct. The observation windows above were chaos, people shoving away, some falling as the artificial gravity flickered again. Through it all, the Queen remained. Smoke curled around her. One of her forelimbs bled a viscous, dark fluid from a jagged wound. Her corona had dimmed to a faint shimmer. The corridor around her was emptying of humans. "They're falling back," Kellen said, disbelief thick in his voice. "Mara, there. I see it," she said. Rourke's voice cut through the noise. "All units regroup at Delta now. We have a secondary device somewhere along the primary route. Get clear, repeat, get clear." Myra's boots were already moving. She bolted along the catwalk, then took the emergency ladder 3 rungs at a time, dropping to the smoke-choked corridor. The air was hot, filled with the smell of burning metal and something organic. Her filters whined as they adjusted. The Queen loomed ahead, framed by flickering red. One of her surviving guards stepped forward, staff lowered, mandibles flaring. His crystal-tipped weapon crackled, ready. Myra skidded to a halt, rifle pointed at the deck, hands spread slightly. "Stop!" she shouted over external speakers. "I'm not a threat." The guard didn't move. Behind him, the Queen's head tilted. Myra had the sudden, disorienting sense of being seen not with eyes, but with something that slid neatly past armor and bone and memory to look directly at her choices. The Marines reached the bulkhead and poured through. The door controls flashed red. "Myra!" Kellen's voice crackled in her ear. "Where are you?" "Still in Spine 1, she said. "Then move, secondary blast incoming, commands reading unstable thermal signatures. You stay in there, you're going to be vaporized." Mara's gaze flicked to the Queen. She was alone. Every human, every armed guard, every security specialist had fallen back to safety. Every human but Mara. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, as tangible as the heat on her face. Protocol said, "Follow orders. Preserve your life so you can protect again another day." But every briefing, every treaty outline, every speech about this summit had driven one point home. If the Queen died on a human station, there would be no alliance. There would be war, and even without the politics, something in her chest clenched at the idea of leaving anyone behind. Human, alien, it didn't matter. The shape of the choice was the same. "Imani," Rourke's voice now, sharp as a blade. "Get out of there." Myra took a breath that tasted like ash. "Negative, sir," she said. "The Queen is still in the blast zone. I'm staying with her." There was a heartbeat of stunned silence on the line. Then Rourke hissed, "Lieutenant, that's an order." "I know, sir," Myra said, "and I'm disobeying it. Mark it in the log." She cut the command channel before he could respond. For a moment, all she heard was the hiss of venting gas, the distant shouts of evacuating personnel, and the slow, heavy breathing of the Queen. The Sakar guard still had his staff lowered. The crystal tip pulsed. Myra raised her empty hand, palm outward. "I'm here to protect you," she said, turning her external speakers down so the sound was less harsh. Her voice sounded thin in the vast corridor. The guard's mandibles clicked uncertainly. The Queen took one slow step forward, her injury making the motion slightly uneven. Her crest dipped, then rose. The faint shimmer around her pulsed once. Myra felt something like a question brush her mind. She swallowed. "Yeah," she whispered, more to herself than to anyone else. "Me too." Then behind her the deck bucked. Another explosion, deeper in the station. The Queen flinched, catching herself on her undamaged limbs. The bulkhead at the far end of the corridor groaned, then crumpled inward as some distant force warped the framework. The station was under attack. And Myra Imani, who had once believed being a hero was simple, found herself alone in a burning corridor with a wounded alien monarch and a choice that would ripple through two civilizations. For the pact in the fire, Myra moved first. "Field medic protocols," she said aloud, as much to keep herself from freezing as to remind her own muscles what to do. She slung her rifle across her back, hands going to the medical compartment on her utility belt. She didn't know Sakar physiology. No human did, not in detail, but the wound on the Queen's limb oozed in a way that looked distressingly like arterial bleed. She grabbed a hypofabric patch and a chemical sealant. "I'm coming closer," she told the guard. "If you spear me, this is going to be a very short alliance." The Sakar warrior's antennae twitched. He looked back at his Queen, who watched with unblinking eyes, then stepped aside a fraction. It was hardly an invitation. It was enough. Myra approached slowly, every instinct screaming that she was stepping into the reach of something that could crush her like a can. Up close, the Queen's size was overwhelming. The plates of her exoskeleton were etched with faint, intricate patterns like carvings worn by time. The wound was a jagged tear in the joint of a forelimb where softer tissue met hard plate. The fluid leaking out smoked faintly where it hit the deck. Myra knelt, steadying her hands. "I'm going to put this here," she murmured, more for her own nerves than for the Queen's benefit. "If your immune system hates it, we'll both find out quickly." She pressed the hypofabric patch to the wound. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the patch flexed, color shifting to match the dark fluid. Its microfilaments engaged, bonding to the Queen's tissue. The leak slowed. Myra sprayed the edges with sealant. The chemical hissed, then hardened. The Queen's limb tensed, claws scraping the deck, but she did not strike. "Okay," Myra exhaled. "That's something." Another tremor shook the station. This one came with an ugly metallic screech. The gravity flickered again, sending Myra briefly weightless before slamming her back to the deck. Her comm crackled to life on a backup channel. "Ma, this is Kellen. You still breathing?" "Unfortunately," she replied, tapping her earpiece. "What's happening topside?" "Everything's going to hell," he said. "We've got multiple explosions in outer rings. Someone's piggybacking a virus onto the grid. Half our security systems are looping old feeds. Command thinks this was a coordinated strike." "Let me guess," Myra said. "Pure Dawn finally decided to earn their reputation." "Yeah," Kellen said grimly. "They posted a manifesto 30 seconds after the first blast. No queens in human space, that kind of charming speciesist garbage. They want her radiant bugness dead. And specifically inside human jurisdiction, Mara grimaced. So if she dies here, they can spin it. Pretty much. Where are you now? Still in Spine 1, Mara said. With the Queen. You what? Mara ignored the disbelief. What about Command, Rourke? He's locked down at Delta with a Marine squad, Kellen said. They're trying to reroute the Queen's evacuation, but the corridors ahead are compromised. Fire, hull breaches, you name it. Official word is, stay put until they can secure a path. Mara looked around. The corridor was a mess of twisted metal and drifting smoke, and behind the Queen toward her original chamber, the deck lights flickered madly, alarms blinking amber and red. Staying put here meant waiting in a kill box. No good, she said. Spine 1 is a target. They already hit it once. They'll do it again. Got any better ideas? Kellen asked. Mara chewed her lip. What about service conduits, maintenance tunnels, the ones running parallel to the main corridor? Those are cramped as hell, Kellen said. Queen-sized cargo doesn't fit in them. She's not cargo, Mara snapped. But she's also not that much bigger than a freight bot. We've squeezed those through access ports before. Kellen made a low whistle. You're thinking of taking an alien monarch through the guts of the station. You got a better route where she won't be a giant target, Mara shot back. Silence on the line for a moment. Then, reluctantly, Conduit K-17 runs behind your position, intersects with the central spine near the docking hub. If you can get her there, there's a secure path to the emergency docking ring. But Mara, those tunnels aren't rated for this kind of thing. Neither is the corridor, she said. Send me the schematics. Her HUD pinged as Kellen uplinked the map. Mara turned to the Queen. Okay, she said, switching back to external speakers. We need to move. They're going to try to hit you again, and I'd rather not be in the crosshairs when that happens. The Queen's head tilted, crest shifting slightly. The faint corona around her brightened a fraction. The surviving guard clicked his mandibles. Human soldier, came a voice, raspy and layered, translated into her ear by the auto-lingual interface. You ordered your warriors to abandon? Mara blinked. What? No, that was... She realized the Sakaar had no easy way to distinguish between individual humans in uniform. To them, all the voices shouting over comm, all the armed figures retreating, probably looked like one mind changing its decision. I didn't order that, she said sharply. That was my commanding officer. I chose to stay. The guard's antennae twitched. The Queen's eyes, those many dark lenses, shifted slightly, focusing more fully on Mara. The corona pulsed. The brush against Mara's mind came again, sharper this time. Not invasive, not like a knife, but like a huge hand reaching out to touch something fragile. She stiffened as images, not her own, flickered at the edge of perception. Rows of hatchlings, their shells soft and pearlescent, pulsing with shared thoughts. The hum of the hive chorus, millions of voices singing the same song of survival. Stars seen from within a living ship, its walls breathing. It wasn't language, it was context. A sense of a self that did not end its skin or shell. Then, layered over that vastness, a small, bright point. Her, Mara Imani human standing in a corridor filled with smoke, defying the flow of her own kind. The question came again, not as a sentence, but she understood it. Why? Because leaving you would be wrong, she thought, unsure whether the Queen could hear the words in her head or just the shape of them. Because someone has to draw a line and say, not this time. Because we promised, we deprotect you, and promises are supposed to mean something. She didn't know which of those reasons the Queen felt, but the alien's corona flickered and something like surprise rippled through that mental contact. Surprise and a faint note of curiosity. The pressure withdrew, leaving Mara slightly dizzy. All right, she said hoarsely. So we have a kind of understanding, maybe. Good, we're leaving. She pointed down the corridor to an access hatch halfway along the wall. There's a maintenance conduit there that runs behind this hallway. We'll take you through that to the station hub, then to a secure dock. Your people can get you to safety from there. The guard clicked uncertainly. Those tunnels are narrow, unworthy of her radiance. Mara almost laughed. I'm sure she's endured worse than low ceilings. We don't have time to debate dignity. Another tremor shook the station, punctuating her words. The queen shifted her injured limb. Then, with surprising grace, she began to move. Myra jogged toward the access hatch, palms slick. She'd used these conduits to chase smugglers before, to reroute power, to fix leaks. They were barely wide enough for two humans to pass each other sideways. Watching the queen approach, it was like watching a whale prepare to squeeze into a drainage pipe. As she neared, the shimmer around her brightened. The conduit hatch controls flickered to life on Mara's HUD, then suddenly changed, widening parameters, unlocking safeties. The circular hatch iris dilated wider than its design specifications. "What did you just do?" Mara murmured. The queen's corona pulsed. Interface, a concept brushed her mind. Systems, metal hive, accepting touch. "You're talking to the station," Mara whispered, equal parts awe and fear. "You integrated with our grid?" The queen did not answer in any way a human would recognize. But the hatch was now wide enough for her to lower her head and slide her primary bulk inside, limbs folding with a spider-like grace. The conduit walls groaned faintly as her exoskeleton brushed them, but they held. The guard followed, staff crackling. Myra took one last look back down the smoke-choked corridor. On one level, she knew she was committing a career-ending act, disobeying orders, putting herself in unsanctioned proximity to a foreign sovereign. If they survived, she'd likely face court-martial. On another level, those concerns felt very small when measured against the potential of a dead queen and a reignited war. She ducked into the conduit after them. 5 through the guts of Halcyon, the maintenance conduit was a cylindrical tunnel, cables and pipes running along its length. Emergency lights strobed at intervals, painting everything in flickering hues. The queen filled most of the space. She had folded her limbs tight, her body elongated, crest scraping faintly along the upper curve. Her bioluminescence cast strange shadows. Mara moved along the slender strip of walkable deck beside the main pipe cluster, hand brushing the walls for balance as the station shuddered intermittently. Behind them, the access hatch sealed. On her HUD, Kellen's updated schematics blinked. Their routes snaked through a maze of conduits, intersecting with power trunks and ventilation shafts. "Okay," she said, mostly to herself. "We're here at K-17E. We need to move." 80 meters forward, then up one level, then right to junction Zeta 3. "Copy," came Kellen's voice, faint over the backup channel. "I'm patching your location to command, but the signal's spotty. If I stop answering, assume the grid went down again." "Or you got exploded," Mara said. "Yeah, that too," he said lightly, but she heard the strain in his voice. She started forward, boots clanging softly. The queen moved behind her, each shift of her massive body making the conduit creak. As they went, Mara began to notice something. Doors were opening before they reached them. Subsystems, normally requiring manual codes, blinked green in her HUD moments ahead of time. Pathways that should have been locked by emergency protocols were instead marked available. She realized what that meant as another hatch irised open in front of them without her touching it. "You're still talking to the station," she said over her shoulder. The queen's corona shimmered faintly, motes of light spiraling outward along the conduit walls. In Mara's inside ear, the translator whispered, struggling with nonverbal input. "This structure hums like a young hive shell," it rendered. "Its mind is simple, it accepts guidance." "You're overriding our safety systems?" Mara asked, half appalled, half impressed. "We negotiate," the translated voice said. "Your metal hive shakes and we steady it. We say, open, and it opens." Mara felt another faint mental brush, this time aligned with the conduit's own systems. A three-way awareness, her mind, the Queen, S, and the station's rudimentary machines intersecting for an instant. She saw or felt glimpses, fire suppression drones rerouted to choke a blaze near the docking ring, airlocks closing ahead of a pressure leak. camera feeds flickering as viral code tried to overwrite them, only to be swamped by a tide of alien logic. "You're fighting their virus," she realized. "On our network. Your smaller minds wrote a scream of numbers to tear your metal hive apart," the Queen's translator murmured. "We write a song to hold it together. This is acceptable exchange. You anchor us in your realm, we anchor you in ours." "This is not how I expected my day to go," Myra muttered. They reached the first junction. The conduit split three ways. Her HUD flickered as Kellen's overlay struggled to adjust. Then abruptly, a route highlighting glowed brighter along the right-hand tunnel. Myra raised an eyebrow. "You're giving directions?" "We taste the flows," the voice said. "The hot rivers of power, the trembling air. Danger sense this way, not that." "Guess we're taking the safer-smelling one," Myra said, turning right. As they crawled deeper into the station's guts, Myra became hyper-aware of the Queen's presence behind her. There was the physical reality, massive, armored, humming with bioelectric currents. But there was also the mental pressure. Not constant, but in pulses. Sometimes it was like sharing a room with someone whose breathing you could just barely hear. Other times, a sudden, sharp focus, as if the Queen's attention had zeroed in on her. At one point, as they squeezed past a cluster of coolant pipes, Myra's foot slipped on a patch of condensation. She flailed, the conduit pitching as the station shuddered again. Her head smacked the wall. For a heartbeat, her vision flared white, and in that instant, the Queen's mind collided with hers. Images poured in, too fast and too rich. The war from the other side, not a swarm of senseless monsters, but a hive trying desperately to understand why these strange, sharp, short-lived creatures from blue worlds kept burning their ships. A brood lost when human torpedoes cracked a nursery asteroid. The Queen's own mind fracturing and reforming as countless voices died. Myra staggered. "Stop," she gasped, pressing a hand to her helmet. "Too much, too fast." The flood cut off abruptly. The Queen's corona dimmed. "Apology," the translator whispered after a moment. "We forget your minds are narrow rivers, not oceans." Myra breathed hard, anchoring herself in the present, the metal beneath her boots, the distant rumble, the smell of burnt ozone. "It's okay," she said, though her hands shook. "Just less next time, sip, don't pour." Somewhere behind her, mandibles clicked in a pattern she was slowly learning to recognize as amusement. "Your metaphors, amuse, we will sip." They kept moving. Once when the conduit sloped downward, they passed a ventilation grate. Through it, Myra glimpsed a wide cargo bay below, now a battlefield. Armed humans in mismatched armor traded fire with station security. The attackers wore no coalition insignia, only white armbands with a rising sun symbol, Pure Dawn's emblem. She saw Rourke there leading a squad, his movements efficient and vicious. He kicked a gun from a man's hand, drove an elbow into another's throat, barked orders that cut through the chaos. His face, under the combat lights, looked younger and older all at once, and furious. Myra lingered just long enough to see a cluster of attackers fall back toward a central console where one of them slid a data spike into a port. The consoles around them flickered, then died. The attackers grinned. Then suddenly the emergency lighting in the bay shifted from red to a steady blue. Doors they'd locked behind them slid open again. Their guns, smart rails, blinked error codes. The saboteur yanked the spike out, baffled. Across the bay, Rourke looked up, eyes narrowing. "Someone just gave us our systems back," Kellen's voice said quietly in Mara's ear. "Whatever you and your new friend are doing, keep doing it." Mara glanced back at the Queen. "You're saving our people," she said. Queen's corona pulsed faintly. "You are saving us," the translator whispered. "Balance." They moved on. The Pure Dawn, they were halfway to the hub when Kellen's voice came through again, sharp and tight. "Mara, change of plans. You've got company heading your way." Her hand went automatically to her rifle. "Define company." "Pure Dawn Strike Team," he said. "Our side caught a fragment of their comms. They know the Queen left her chamber. They think she's in the service conduits. They're moving to intercept." "How?" Myra demanded. "These tunnels aren't on public schematics." "They're not idiots," Kellen said. Station workers sympathetic to their cause, stolen access maps, whatever. Point is, they're ahead of you on one of the upper levels. If you keep on your current path, you'll intersect in about 10 minutes. Myra skidded to a halt, nearly colliding with a pipe. The Queen's head bumped slightly against her from behind, though Mara doubted it had actually unbalanced the massive alien. Options? She asked. Backtracking will put you closer to the initial blast zones, Kellen said. And the station's not stable there. You might get crushed by a collapsing bulkhead before anything finds you. Forward means running into fanatics who'd love to record the martyrdom of the human who betrayed her species for a bug queen on a live feed. You make everything sound so appealing, Mara muttered. She pulled up the conduit schematics again, trying to see what the raw lines and codes had missed. The Queen's corona shimmered. A new route highlight appeared, this one angling sharply upward into a narrower branch. What's that? Mara asked. Kellen said, that's not one of my marks. It's hers, Mara said. She says she can feel where the attackers are. Right, sure, telepathic hardware GPS, why not? Kellen muttered. Can you avoid them? Looks like it, Mara said. But the alternate path is tightly wound around the main power trunk. If anything goes wrong there, we'll be right in the fry zone. Power's fluctuating, but the trunk's still intact, Kellen said. And given the alternative is walking into an ambush, I'd go with the hot pipe. Myra took a breath. She thought of Rurk's speech, "You're not heroes, you're walls." She thought of the Marines running for the bulkheads while the Queen stood alone. She thought of her father watching war feeds saying they don't think like we do. Fine, she said. We'll take the risky route. She turned to the Queen. We're going up. Try not to break the power core, okay? I kind of like existing. The Queen's crystal-tipped guard staff flickered. We would prefer you continue existing as well, Mara Imani, the translator murmured. You are intriguing, Mara blinked. You learned my name. Your mesh talk reveals it when others speak. Names matter, they define patterns in the swarm. Flattering, she said, throat dry. They turned into the new conduit. The path narrowed further, forcing the Queen to compress even more. Her exoskeleton scraped sparks from the walls. Heat radiated from the massive power cables running alongside them, bathing the tunnel in a low, insistent hum. As they climbed, the station's vibrations grew more erratic. Twice, Myra had to brace herself against the wall as the conduit bucked. Once, an arc of electricity snapped from a cable to the Queen's exoskeleton, dancing across her plates before grounding. The Queen barely flinched. This metal hive is young, the translator whispered in Mara's ear. It was not grown for such strain. Your kind pushes it hard. You sound like our engineers, Mara muttered. We have eaten many engineers, the Queen said, and for a second Mara choked before the translator added dryly, wisdom has a flavor. Please never say that to a human diplomat, Mara said. Pretty sure we ate your engineers is a bad icebreaker. Before the Queen could reply, the conduit ahead lit with muzzle flashes. Myra threw herself sideways as bullets screamed down the tunnel, ricocheting off the Queen's armor in bursts of sparks. Pain flared in her arm where a round grazed her shoulder plate. Her HUD flashed red. Contact, she shouted. Shapes moved in the dimness ahead, human silhouettes in armored vests, faces masked, white armbands bright even in the gloom. Down on your knees, one of them roared. Hands where we can see them. Mara's laugh sounded cracked. You want her on her knees. You're welcome to try to push. Step away from the Xeno, the man snarled. His rifle bore a scratched sun symbol. In the cramped conduit, there was nowhere to take cover. Myra pressed herself as far as she could against the wall, half behind the curve of the Queen's limb. You fire in here, she said. You risk hitting the power trunk. You cook us all that your glorious human future, a charred smear on a conduit wall. The man hesitated a fraction. Behind him, someone else spoke. We have insulated rounds. We came prepared. Myra's heart pounded. Kellen, she thought desperately, now would be a great time for a miracle. On cue, Kellen's voice crackled in her ear. I'm working on it. The Queen's interfacing with the grid all across the station. We might be able to force a localized blackout in your conduit. Their visors will go blind. And mine? She asked. Yours too, he said. But you've got a 4-meter armored friend and a decent sense of balance. They've got guns and fanaticism. I like your odds. Great, she said dryly. Aloud, she said to the Pure Dawn soldiers, you don't have to do this. Whatever your leaders told you, killing her doesn't save anyone. It just drags us back into a war we barely survived the first time. Save your speeches, the man snapped. We won that war, then politicians sold our victory away. We're taking it back. Mara shook her head. You didn't win, neither did they. You just stopped losing long enough to talk. You sound like Ocampo, another attacker sneered. Maybe I'll send him your body as a gift when this is done. Myra's fingers tightened on her rifle. Mara, Kellen whispered. 3, 2, 1, now. The world went dark, not just the lights, the HUD, the visor display, the faint glow from the Queen's corona. Everything snapped to black like someone had thrown a hood over her head. Gunfire erupted, panic tight. Bullets screamed off metal. Someone shouted, I can't see. Another cursed. Mara moved. Years of drills kicked in. Blind fighting, counting steps, remembering positions. She shoved off the wall, letting the memory of the conduit map guide her. The Queen's last position, the attacker's silhouettes, their likely bracing stance, they all existed in her muscle memory. She slammed bodily into a human form, grabbing for the rifle by feel. Fingers closed around metal. She twisted, driving her knee into a thigh, ripping the weapon away. The man grunted, swinging at her. His fist clipped her helmet, sending stars across the darkness behind her eyes. The Queen moved too. Even blind, the sound of her mass shifting was unmistakable. Something cracked, a pipe maybe, or bone. A human screamed, cut short as air whooshed out of lungs. Myra used the chaos. She dropped, flat rolled, fired the stolen rifle once toward where she'd last heard a voice. A grunt answered. Someone else shouted, flares, use freaking flares. A ball of harsh white light bloomed in the conduit. Myra's visor went to maximum dim, but it still hurt. Tears sprang to her eyes. In the flare's glare, she saw a Pure Dawn soldier lying at the Queen's feet, his chest crushed. Another struggled to aim around his comrade, sighting on Mara. She fired first. Her shot took him in the shoulder, spinning him into the wall. His rifle clattered. The leader, the man with the sun's symbol scratched into his gun, snarled, lifting a pistol. The Queen's corona flared white. For an instant, Mara saw something invisible, a rippling wave of force in the air, distorting the space between them. It hit the attackers like a physical blow. They slammed against the conduit walls, weapons flying from their hands, muscles spasming. One of them convulsed, then went limp. Mara staggered, the tail of the wave brushing her mind. She felt her own muscles tighten, teeth grinding, but the effect was gentler on her, like an electric shock dialed down. The flare sputtered and died, plunging them back into dim emergency lighting. 3 Pure Dawn soldiers lay unconscious or dead. The leader knelt, gasping, his pistol still in his hand. He raised it, hand trembling. Mara aimed her rifle at his face. Don't, she said, his eyes behind the half-shattered visor burned with hatred. Traitor, he spat. Soldier, she shot back, who chose a different enemy. They stared at each other over their guns. Then the Queen's corona pulsed. The leader froze. Myra felt the mental pressure focus, sharp and narrow, like a needle instead of a tidal wave. This one's mind burns hot, the translator whispered in her ear. It is sharp but brittle. Please don't shatter him, Mara said quietly. We're trying not to create more martyrs today. He would kill us, the Queen replied matter-of-factly. Yeah, Mara said, so make it less of a choice for him. The Queen considered that, then gently she reached. Mara watched the leader's gaze unfocus, his sneer falter. His pistol hand slackened. He blinked, eyes darting as if he were seeing something that wasn't there. What's? He stammered. Mara stepped forward, kicked the pistol out of his hand, and struck him behind the ear with the butt of her rifle. He crumpled. You did not trust our mercy, the Queen observed. I don't trust concussions either, Mara said. But unconscious people are easier to haul to prison than existentially shattered ones. The Queen's mandibles clicked softly. We sipped, the translator said. We showed him one moment, one heartbeat from our broodship as it burned. He will not find glory in that memory. Mara swallowed. I hope that helps, she said. It won't, she thought, but didn't say. One glimpse of alien suffering might crack a fanatic, or it might harden them. Either way, it would haunt him. She pushed past the unconscious forms, checking for pulses. 2 alive, 1 dead. She tagged their locations in her HUD. Kellen, she said, we've had our first close encounter. 3 hostiles neutralized in conduit K-17. Mark them for pickup. Already on it, he said, relief obvious. You okay? Alive, she said. Shaken, Queen's fine, power trunks intact. Good, you're 2 junctions away from the hub. Move fast. Command's getting word that Pure Dawn has 1 more card to play. Define card. Rourke S. trying to confirm, Kellen said. But early chatter says the word reactor is coming up a lot. Mara's stomach dropped. On it, she said. Tell Command to make sure the docking ring is ready. We're almost there. 7. The reactor gambit the station hub was chaos. Mara knew this before they even reached it. The closer they crawled, the more the vibrations intensified. The emergency lighting stuttered in frantic bursts. Heat bled through the conduits in waves. Her HUD showed the hub schematics flickering as systems went offline and online in dizzying patterns. Kellen's voice had degraded to intermittent bursts of static. Trying, lockdown, reactor manual override, Pure Dawn, control deck. When they emerged into the final access node, a cramped chamber with 4 branching conduits and a vertical shaft, Myra felt a knot in her chest tighten. The shaft opened downward onto the central hub's superstructure. She crawled to the edge and looked down. The station's heart lay beneath them, a vast cylindrical space, multiple levels of catwalks and control stations surrounding the glowing pillar of the main reactor. It pulsed with angry blue light, containment fields flickering visibly. Humans swarmed the catwalks, some in coalition uniforms, some in Pure Dawn's mismatched armor. Gunfire flashed, sparks flew from ruptured consoles. Smoke coiled upward. On one of the central platforms, Myra spotted Commander Rourke. He stood at the edge of the reactor's main control deck, facing a cluster of armed Pure Dawn operatives who had dug in behind overturned consoles. One of them, a woman with close, cropped hair and a white sun symbol painted on her cheek, held a small device in her hand, a detonator by the look of it. Another worked furiously at a terminal, fingers flying over a jury-rigged interface. Even from up here, Mara could see the readouts flickering ominously. They're overriding containment, she whispered. They squeeze the core until it splits, the Queen's translator murmured. Your metal hive's heart will burst and fire will eat this place. If the reactor blows, it'll take the docking ring, the Queen, the diplomats, everyone, Mara said, and they'll say we did it to kill her. Rourke's voice floated faintly up from below, amplified by the station's PA. You'll kill every human on this station, he was saying. Your own people. They're acceptable losses, the woman snarled. We'll be remembered as heroes, the ones who ended this abomination before it could corrupt us. This isn't corruption, Rourke snapped. This is survival. You think we can win a second war like the first? Look around you. We barely hold space as it is, she spat at his feet. Maybe you've gotten soft, old man. We haven't. Beside her, the hacker shouted, We're almost at Cascade threshold. 1 more override. Myra's thoughts raced. They were too far above to take a clean shot. If she tried to line up a rifle, she'd be silhouetted against the shaft, easy prey. And even if she hit the hacker, whoever held the detonator could trigger something manually. The Queen moved up beside her, peering down the shaft. The metal around them creaked ominously as her weight shifted. Mara Imani, the Queen's translator murmured. This place is fragile. Your metal hive's heart is unsteady. Reactor S on the verge of meltdown, yeah, Mara said. If they push it over, we're done. The Queen's corona shimmered. We can touch it, the whisper continued. We feel its rhythm. It is like holding a trembling hatchling. The shell will crack if not guided. Mara stared. You're saying you can stabilize it, she asked. From here, we can try, the Queen said, But their scream code fights us. We push, it pushes back. If we press too hard, we may break the pattern ourselves. Perfect, Mara muttered. So my options are do nothing and definitely explode, or do something and maybe explode faster. She glanced down at Rourke again. He had his sidearm drawn, aimed steadily at the woman with the detonator. But she held a hand over a console as well, fingers poised to slam down on a manual override. Both of them were locked in a standstill, each waiting for the other to twitch. Mara made a decision. "Okay," she said to the Queen. "We do this together. You keep the reactor from blowing. I keep them from breaking it on purpose." "We will bear the heat," the Queen said, "but this will hurt." "For who?" Mara asked. "For us, for this shell, for the metal hive that is not ours, and yet we have touched its mind now. We dislike the thought of its song ending." Mara swallowed. "Welcome to empathy," she said. "It's awful." She looked around the access node, eyes scanning for anything she could use. There, a maintenance winch mounted above the shaft, used for lowering heavy equipment. Thick cables hung coiled beside it. An insane idea sparked. "You're not going to like this," she told the Queen. She attached the winch's harness to the Queen's front plates, securing anchor clamps as best she could. "What are you doing?" the translator asked, tinge of alarm creeping in. "Giving them something they can't ignore," Mara said. "You're going to be the biggest distraction in the room." She slotted her own harness into a secondary line. "Mara Imani," the Queen said, "this plan seems suboptimal." "That's military code for completely stupid but possibly heroic," Mara said. "On 3, we drop." She tapped into the winch controls. Fortunately, they were old and mechanical enough not to have been hacked by either side's viruses. Below, Rourke and the Pure Dawn leader still faced each other, locked in a tense stalemate. 1, Myra said. She took a breath. 2. She thought of all the stories she'd heard growing up, monsters in the dark, alien queens devouring worlds, righteous human heroes. She thought of the quiet hum of the Queen's mind brushing hers, the images of burning broodships, the taste of shared fear. 3. She hit the release. The winch screamed as it paid out cable. Gravity yanked them downward. Mara's stomach lurched into her throat. Wind tore at her, whipping smoke into her face. They exploded out of the shaft into the cavernous hub like a meteor and its tail. For one frozen instant, everyone below stared up. Rourke's eyes went wide. The Pure Dawn soldiers' faces turned from shock to horror. The Queen descended like a dark star, corona blazing, limbs spread in a controlled flare. Myra swung alongside her, harness biting into her shoulders. "Now," the Queen's mind voice whispered. Her corona erupted in a storm of motes. Myra felt the station's systems shudder as the Queen reached out, not just to the local conduits, but to the reactor itself. The pulsing glow at the core of the pillar flickered wildly. Readouts on nearby consoles spiked. The hacker shouted, "What the hell is that? Something's rewriting the control lattice." Myra snapped her rifle up mid-swing and fired. Her shot took the hacker in the leg, sending him sprawling away from the console. He screamed, clutching the wound. Gunfire answered, bullets whining past Myra as she swung. One grazed her thigh, sending flares of pain up her side. The Queen hit the deck like a living thunderclap. The impact shook the platform, cracking tiles. Her limbs absorbed the shock, claws digging into metal. The humans nearest her stumbled, some falling outright. The Pure Dawn leader with the detonator shrieked, raising it. The Queen's corona pulsed. The detonator sparked, smoked, and exploded in the woman's hand, not outward but inward, fusing its circuits and sending her sprawling with a cry of burned flesh. Myra cut her winch line with a quick release, tumbling into a roll as she hit the deck. She came up in a crouch, rifle aimed at the nearest armed attacker. "Drop it," she shouted, voice amplified. "Everyone stand down." Several of the Pure Dawn operatives hesitated, eyes darting between Mara, the Queen, and the reactor, whose glow had gone from angry to strained. Rourke recovered first. He stepped forward, gun trained steadily on the Pure Dawn leader. "On your knees," he barked. "Hands on your heads, that's your one chance." One of the fanatics snarled. "Shut up," Rourke snapped. You tried to kill my station. You tried to kill my people. And you tried to kill a guest under my protection. You're lucky I'm still willing to let you see a courtroom." Mara felt the Queen's presence intensify. The reactor's unstable pulses smoothed slightly, then shuddered again. A low hum filled the air like a swarm of distant insects. On the nearer consoles, warning lights flashed: overheat. Containment threshold critical. Manual intervention required. "Mara," Kellen's voice crackled, faint. "Reactor S reading a massive foreign input. I'm guessing that's your friend." "Yeah," she said through gritted teeth. "She's holding it together to a point, but she can't do it alone. Our systems are fighting her." "The override panel's 3 meters to your left," Kellen said. "If you can manually reset the feedback regulators while she cushions the surge, you might stabilize the core." "And if we don't," Mara asked, "we all vaporize. Give or take," he said. "Right," she muttered. She slung her rifle and sprinted for the console. Heat washed over her, making every step feel like wading through a furnace. Her visor's temperature warnings screamed. Sweat stung her eyes. The console's surface was a mess of warnings, code, and damage. The Pure Dawn hacker had rerouted half the safety interlocks. The Queen's mental presence hovered at the edge of Mara's mind, a vast pressure resisting the core's growing instability. "We press," the translator whispered, strain evident. "We hold the shell. Shape your numbers." "You heard the lady," Mara muttered, fingers flying. "I'll handle the math, you handle the metaphysics." She dove into the controls. Her hands moved with the ingrained muscle memory of dozens of drills, reroute power from non-essential decks, re-engage the secondary coolant loops, flush the spike routines, clear the cascade. The problem was the hacker hadn't just disabled safeguards. He'd inverted some, turned failsafes into triggers. Myra traced lines of code like veins, stabbing at keys, cursing under her breath. The reactor's glow brightened, edges of the containment field rippling. The Queen let out a low, layered sound, her limbs digging deeper into the deck as if bracing. Myra felt the heat in her bones. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." Then she saw it, the hinge point, a single inverted command, and if then loop set to flip the coolant into overdrive only after the core breached. She flipped it back. The console screamed warning. Then abruptly some of the red lights snapped to amber, then green. Coolant flooded the core. The angrily pulsing glow steadied, its color mellowing from eye-watering blue to something deeper, calmer. The vibrations underfoot subsided. Myra sagged against the console, gasping. The Queen's corona dimmed, motes settling. "The hatchling breathes easier," the translator whispered, voice almost fond. "We have held its shell closed." "You just saved a reactor," Myra said hoarsely. "That's going to look great on your resume." Around them, the chaos had quieted. Pure Dawn operatives knelt on the deck, hands bound behind them with smart cuffs. Coalition Marines and station security stood over them, weapons steady. Rourke approached slowly, gun lowered but not holstered. He looked at Mara first. "You disobeyed a direct order," he said. She straightened as best she could in her heat-exhausted state. "Yes, sir." "You abandoned your post," he continued. "You took an unsanctioned path with a foreign sovereign through unsecured areas of this station. You engaged hostiles without backup. You tampered with critical reactor controls without clearance." "Yes, sir," she said again. He stared at her for a long, hard second. Then his gaze shifted to the Queen. Even standing tall, the Queen seemed slightly diminished. Her injured limb trembled faintly. Her corona was dim. Rourke's lips pressed into a thin line. Slowly, deliberately, he holstered his gun. Then he bowed. It was a small bow by human standards, just a dip of the head and shoulders, but in the deafening silence of the hub it felt monumental. "On behalf of this station," he said, voice carrying, "I apologize for the failure of my men. Our fear got the better of us. One of us at least remembered why we're here." He nodded toward Mara. "Everyone ran from you," he said. "Everyone but her." The Queen's head tilted. Her corona pulsed faintly. "The swarm remembers," the translator whispered. "There were wars in our distant past before we met your kind. There were those among us who stood between our queens and the fire when others fled. We call them bonded shields. Her many eyes turned to Mara. This human stood when others ran, the queen continued. She held the shell when it cracked. We name her shield that stayed. Mara felt heat rush to her face, not from the reactor this time. I was just doing my job, she said hoarsely. You went beyond your job, the queen said. You defied your swarm's pattern for us. That is deviation, that is choice, that is rare. Rourke's gaze softened just a fraction. This isn't going to be easy, he said, looking up at the queen. There are going to be investigations, trials, conspiracy hearings. There will be people on both sides calling for blood. He glanced at the bound, Pure Dawn operatives. And maybe they'll get some, he added coldly. Legal blood, but not yours, not hers. He straightened, squaring his shoulders. We finish this summit, he said. We show them we survived this together. The queen's corona brightened. We agree, the translator murmured. We will tell our swarms, when the fire came, many humans ran, but one stayed, and with that one we held the shell closed. Mara, swaying on her feet, thought of the title that would no doubt end up on 100 feeds, 1,000 retellings. When the guards ran, the humans stayed. She wondered how much of the terror and confusion, the sweat and burns and split-second choices would survive in those stories. Probably not much. Stories were clean. Reality was messy still. If the story they told helped even one human child or one Sakar hatchling look at the other with a little less fear, maybe that was enough. 8. The aftermath in the days that followed, the Halcyon became something else. Not just a diplomatic station, not just a scarred battleground, a symbol. The feeds named the incident a dozen different things. The reactor siege, the Queen's descent, the Pure Dawn gambit. The one that stuck was simple, the day of the shield. Footage from security cams, what little hadn't been corrupted, looped endlessly. Grainy shots of Mara dropping from the ceiling, the Queen's massive form beside her, the reactor's glow flaring and stabilizing. Interview requests piled up. The coalition wanted Mara to give statements to help shape the narrative. She refused most of them. I'm a security officer, she told Ambassador Ocampo when he gently suggested a press conference. Not a politician. You're a bridge now, Ocampo said. Whether you like it or not, she grimaced. Even so, she agreed to one thing, a private debrief with both human and Sakar observers present. The Queen attended in person. The room had been partially retrofitted to accommodate her bulk. She stood at one end, limbs folded, crest brushing the ceiling. Myra sat at the opposite end, feeling small and oddly exposed. Between them, Rourke, Ocampo, and a Sakar envoy named Hrashii listened. Myra told the story as plainly as she could. The blast, the retreat, her choice, the conduits, the fights, the reactor. She left out the moments where she'd panicked, where she'd doubted, where she'd almost turned back. Those belonged to her, not to history. When she finished, silence settled. Hrashii, his bioluminescent markings pulsing a thoughtful green, clicked his mandibles. You risked much, the translator rendered, for one who is not of your swarm. I risked it for my own, too, Mara said. If the Queen died on our watch, we'd all pay the price. Many would have made the calculation and still fled, the Queen's voice murmured. You did not calculate, you leaped. Did you read my mind for that? Mara asked. We tasted the edges, the Queen replied, enough to see the shape of your fear. Rourke cleared his throat. For the record, he said, Lieutenant Imani's actions, while insubordinate from a strict procedural standpoint, directly contributed to the survival of the Queen and the station. I recommend all disciplinary action be waived. Mara stared at him. You were ready to court-martial me, she said quietly, back in Spine 1. I was ready to drag you out by your collar if I could, he corrected. Because I thought it was a suicide run. I was wrong. He met her gaze. Heroes don't follow orders, he said. They follow needs. I learned that the hard way once. I wasn't going to admit it twice in one career. Her throat tightened. Thank you, sir, she managed. Ocampo smiled faintly. We will need to set some protocols, he said, for future joint crises, shared networks, shared response teams. His eyes flicked between Mara and the Queen. I suspect our first bridge unit has already formed, he added. Myra groaned softly. Please don't call it that. What would you suggest? Ocampo asked. The Queen's crest shifted. Bonded shields, she said. That is what we call those who stand when others flee. Mara thought of the moment in the corridor, the choice to stay when her comrades ran. She thought of the Queen lowering herself into a human-made conduit, scraping her armor, risking her life in a hostile space. Bonded shields, she said. I can live with that. Horatiai's markings brightened. We will send candidates from our swarms to train with your bonded shields, he said. To learn your ways, your protocols, your leaping calculations. Ocampo nodded. And we'll send ours to you, he said, to learn how to think as more than one, to understand voices that aren't human. The Queen's corona pulsed. This alliance has bled together, she said. That makes its roots deep, harder to tear. Rourke looked at Mara again. You know what this means for you, right? He said. That I'm going to be buried in paperwork for the rest of my life, she asked. That you're going on every recruiting poster from here to the outer belt, he said dryly. The human who stayed. She made a face. If they're going to make posters, she said, they'd better put her on them too. She nodded at the Queen. I didn't hold that reactor alone. The Queen's mandibles clicked in what Mara now recognized as a smile. Then the story your swarms tell will be true, the translator murmured. Everyone ran from the alien Queen except one human, and together they held the shell. 9. The story and the truth months later on a quiet watch shift aboard a different station. This one a joint human Sakar facility. Mara sat in an observation lounge watching a distant nebula glow. 2 Sakar drones tended to the hydroponic beds nearby. They humming sang as they worked, a low chorus that had become oddly comforting. A screen on the wall played a documentary. Mara tried to ignore it. And that was the moment, the narrator's voice intoned, when Lieutenant Mara Imani, facing certain death, chose to defy orders and stand by the alien monarch. While human guards fled in terror, she and the Queen descended into the heart of the station. Mara pinched the bridge of her nose. A Sakar envoy named Kurtil, sitting nearby with a bowl of nutrient gel, tilted his head. Do you dislike your story? The translator asked. I dislike parts of it, she said. They cut out all the fear, all the mistakes. They make it sound easy, clean. Stories do that, Kurtil agreed. Our swarms tell the tale too. When the metal hive burned, a human shield bound herself to the Queen and held the shell. Hatchlings clicked their mandibles in awe. Mara smiled despite herself. As long as they remember 2 things, she said, that the guards ran and that someone didn't. They remember, Kurtil said, on both sides. Many of our warriors train now to be bonded shields with your people. They learn your protocols, your individual bravery. He paused. Some of your soldiers train with us, he added. They are learning to feel us in their minds, to stand in many places at once. They fall over a lot at first. Mara chuckled. I bet. Kurtil's markings flickered with amusement. On the screen, a dramatized version of her swung down beside a CGI queen, explosions artfully choreographed around them. Reality had been messier, hotter, scarier, but the core of it, one human staying when others ran, choosing connection over fear, that part at least was true. Mara finished her drink and stood. I've got a training session, she said. With who? Kurtil asked. She tilted her head toward the far end of the lounge, where a massive figure waited, limbs folded, crest lowered, corona a soft glow. The Queen. Her radiant matriarch Velshira, supreme sovereign of the Sakar clusters, visitor to a human station turned reluctant guardian of a human reactor. And somehow Mara's partner, friend, there wasn't really a human word for it. We're running scenarios, Mara said. Multi-species crisis response. She says I still rely too much on individual heroics. You do, the Queen's voice murmured in her mind, warm with familiarity. But we are teaching you to be a swarm when it counts. And I'm teaching you to respect safety protocols, Mara thought back. You can't just rip open every sealed door you see. Kurtil chuckled. Go shield that stayed, he said. Teach our Queen about safety. Mara walked toward the queen. As she did, she caught her reflection in the viewing glass. She looked the same. Short hair, scar above her right eyebrow, standard issue uniform. But the way she carried herself felt different, more anchored, more aware of the webs of connection around her. Between human and Sakar, between individual and swarm, between the part of her that had wanted to run and the part that had stayed. "Ready?" she asked the queen. The queen's corona brightened. "Always," the translator whispered. Together they turned away from the stars and toward the training room where simulations of fires and failures and crises waited. There would be more emergencies in the years to come. More moments when fear said run. But somewhere in the stories told across worlds, there would always be that one day on Halcyon. The day everyone ran from the alien queen. Everyone but one human. The day a wall refused to move and instead became a bridge.